Good morning. We've got a few people out there. Hi for people. We've got some joining from Facebook Live. Nice to see you. Can see. Hi, Kim. Nice to see you here. And a few people on Teams. Hi, Fov. Hi. Hello, Sarah. Nice to see you. Oh, Vic. Hey, good. I didn't know you were coming today. Awesome. Okay, so there's still a couple of people trickling in one more by one, so we'll give them one more minute, but I do like to start as on time as possible. So we will get kicked off at 32 minutes past, I promise. Hey Beck, how are you? Hi Rob, excellent.
His speech.
Cool.
Tell Rossellini, so if nothing else, would love her to get up there.
All right. Okay. Nice to see everybody this morning. Many of you are here this morning, but I know we've got a few also joining from the UK. So thank you for your commitment to being here at ungodly hours. We've got, looks like between the two platforms, about 18 people here so far. We had about 50 registered, so a couple more might trickle in, but they may watch it afterwards. But that's okay because you guys that are here live get the bonus points. So well done to you. A few of you I know a few of those names, but quite a few of you I don't know. If you don't know much about me, I will very, very quickly introduce myself, but I know that you are not here to hear about me, so I will only do a very quick blurb about who I am and why you might want to believe me on a couple of these things. But pretty much, I want to get straight into the content because I know your time is very, very limited. And I know how you are here for practical, give me the answers, tell me what to do, and I'll do it. So let's get cracked in. I'm just going to share my screen and hopefully you'll be able to see me next to my screen as well. In the weird, hello, I'm like a weird presenter on a TV broadcast, which makes me a little bit weirded out, but I always wanted to be a journalist, so I'm kind of okay with the vision. Couple more people joining in. Excellent. Okay. So for those of you that are on Facebook Live, you'll be able to see me side by side. For those of you on Teams, probably seeing me as a little bit of a television presenter. If there are any issues, please do raise your hands. I do have the settings so that I can see most of you, even though you can't see each other. So raise your hand or give me a little wave, and I'm more than happy to answer questions as we go or save them to the end. I'm going to do the super awkward work from home reality of my dog is whining to get in the door. So I'm going to pretend that didn't just happen. Hi, luckily I wasn't presenting in my pajamas today, huh? All right, let's kick off. So veterinary culture, okay, and I know there's a couple of you here as well from animal shelters, and I always like to be as inclusive as possible because a lot of the stuff that we deal with in the veterinary world is exactly the same. It's mixing emotions, very passionate people, array of people in terms of their skill sets and academic capacities and emotional intelligence, plus generally a leadership group who is expected to be able to do all things to everybody whilst also being on the ground half the time. So a lot of the stuff is really applicable. But the thing that I found personally when I was in a lot of leadership roles is there is so much what you could do. There are so many cool webinars, so many cool podcasts, books to read. There's a course on this. There's so many different here's all these cool things you could do to improve your culture and create an engaged, successful, forward-thinking team. And so many of them sound awesome. And then you try to do it. And it just doesn't go how you expected it to. It's not accepted, and people aren't as excited about it as you thought they would be, or they are excited about it. And then when it's actually launched, nobody talks about it ever again. And it really just becomes this kind of hamster wheel of feeling like you're constantly trying to improve your culture, constantly trying to engage in your team and their engagement and help them be happy, positive, productive team members and people. And sometimes it feels like you're kind of on the Sisyphean task of trying to roll a ball uphill all the time. So this webinar, it's only a tiny, tiny, tiny little bite, but basically I just want to give you some really quick these are the things that if you're going to spend your time and money, and you've got limited time and money, as we all do, spend them here for the biggest bang for your buck. But also, here are some things that sound pretty that you'll hear about that your staff will probably ask you for. And half of them probably will use a lot of your time and or money, and they might make a small difference, but in terms of bang for your buck, they're probably not things that are high on your priority list if you're not at a big corporate where you've got a team doing these things for you. But then I also at the end want to touch on, we don't have time to do heaps and heaps of examples, but to give an illustration, I guess, of some things can be either or. Some things can be excellent, or they can actually make your culture a little bit worse, depending on how you pull them off. And so there is a lot of stuff with nuance in it. And I just want to give you a couple of examples so you can see, I guess, to pick your battles. All right. So that's kind of what we're going to go through today. And at the end, I will invite you that if you want any more support in this space, of course, you know where I am. So that's why we're here. So should you listen to me? Do I have a clue what I'm talking about? Most of the time, no. But in this particular space, this is something that I am incredibly passionate about, that I've been doing for well over a decade and a half. I am a vet by trade, started in the veterinary profession, realized quite early on I was a pretty mediocre clinician. I'm really about big picture, big vision. Where are we going? What's the future? How do we get to there, rather than the detail and nuance required to be a really great clinician. So went into leadership quite early, have ended up in roles, senior advisor for Auckland Council's animal management, executive manager for RSPCA in WA, CEO for another RSPCA in the Northern Territory. I've been the general manager of Perth's veterinary specialists. I've been the manager of wildlife health for Taronga Zoo. So kind of really in those senior level roles, but also in the senior level roles at very high profile organizations that have a tendency to get slaughtered for anything we are not doing perfectly, which can create an extra layer of emotional drain for a leader, but also an extra layer of expectation for culture and engagement. So this is me. I'm also a mum. I like to point that out and make that really clear, because a lot of people, when they are in leadership roles in animal welfare and or veterinary clinics, are juggling so many balls and they've got so many things in the air. And it's one thing in your 20s, and I certainly know I was better at it in my 20s, when you want to turn around a culture and you really want to make a difference and you're willing to put 60, 70, 80 hours a week in to really do not just your clinical job and your BAU management stuff, but this really awesome job at being a leader and really giving your staff everything they need and being available to them all the time. And then for some of us, life changes, and actually we have to work out how to have an impact, have a wonderful culture, and also be a human being outside of work. And I think it's really important that we do all accept that reality, that we shouldn't, as leaders, have to be going, putting ourselves and our own lives on hold in order to improve the organization that we work for. Sometimes I know a couple of you that are here, hey Sarah, that are business owners that run their own clinic, and sometimes that is a slightly different approach. You do really actually give your heart and soul, because your personal lives and your professional lives are pretty much the same. But for a lot of people, when you're on a salary and you're working 80 hours a week, you're really just saying to your higher ups at the corporate that these things can be done because I will do them on 80 hours a week. And we need to make sure that we shift that culture at the leadership level too, because if we are doing those things, then of course our staff see that we're expected to. But that's me in a nutshell. You guys aren't here to hear about me, though. What you're here to hear about is culture. So I want to start with the biggest, I guess, mistake that I hear all of the time. I go into organizations and I do culture reviews and I help people with various different cultural challenges and turning around toxicity. But the biggest thing that I find when I first walk in is that we really need to reset, for both leaders and staff, what actually are we talking about? Because we have this huge sort of accidental assumption that there's such a thing as a positive culture and a negative culture, and that's it. Like, we're aiming for one fixed vision of a good culture where all of our staff are engaged and happy, and they all come to work and they all tell everybody about how great we are, and they're all giving 100% when they're here, and all of those things are amazing. But the thing with culture is there isn't just a good and a bad. And if we don't decide on purpose what sort of culture we're aiming for, what happens is we just kind of weirdly hedge our bets in the middle, and we get medium impact in that space. We get sort of okay-ish recruitment for those things. We get sort of okay-ish holding people accountable for those things, because we're trying to be all things. So when I talk about culture, it's really important that we take one step back, and before we start talking about what sort of how to improve your culture, we want to work out what is your vision for your culture. And that can't just be good or bad. That can't just be positive or thriving or whatever that looks like. We have to actually work out going to have an excellent culture in terms of security, stability, and good, slow change management, and rapidly growing corporate enterprise. Those two things can coexist, but generally only to a basic level. All right. If you want to be, we are rapidly growing, progressive, out there, we're going to be the best innovative place to work. Awesome. That's an awesome culture to aim for. But you can't also then say that we're aiming to be, a safe, secure, warm, trusted sort of, environment where that you're going to be able to stay here and be part of our family for the next 30 years, which is also an excellent culture to aim for. So do you see the point I'm getting at? Is that what we tend to do is, because we're like, oh, we want to be really progressive and grow, and we want to be safe and stable, so we hedge our bets in the middle, and we don't do either of them very well. So when it comes to, do you want to be warm and friendly and personable, and we have conversations with our clients and our staffs about our personal lives, about we can bring the kids to work if they're sick, and do all of those really warm, supportive things, fabulous. Please go do it. That's a great culture to aim for. If, though, you want to be slick and professional and modern and really progressive and innovating all the time and fast-paced, those two things, again, they can coexist. It's just hard to do both of them well. So when I go and I do work with organizations on culture, we don't start with how do you get your culture better? We start with what culture do you want? So that when you are recruiting new staff, when you are holding your staff accountable, when you are selling your vision to the public, all of those things, we're really clear about if you are looking for X type of place, here is where you want to be. And that is a really important step. My other favorite one to touch on here, because I have not yet managed to get any organization across the line, and I'm still working on it really hard, is that difference between every single one of our, sets of values and the things that we advertise online is all about, gold standard care or, best practice care, which is an amazing aspiration to go for. There are many, many, many people out there that want gold standard care for their pets. There is also, though, a space for contextual care, which is, to put really bluntly, good enough care. All right. Which means that if your staffy comes in with an ear infection the first time around, we might just give it Canoral and send it home and talk to you about how to manage staffy skin, as opposed to every single case needing, swabs and all of this and all of this and all of this, and by the way, this and blah, 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 blah. So this is about not just internally our culture, but what are we talking to our clients about? Who are we? Are we going to do contextual care and do the right thing for you and treat common things commonly? Or are we going to be the sort of place that you want to come if you are looking for platinum standard care? And neither of those are wrong or right. And we tend to kind of villainize one of those and assume that only one of them is good, and we're trying to out gold standard each other all the way along the line. But as it turns out, there is space for all of those things to be the right thing for somebody, staff-wise, culture-wise, and client-wise. So the biggest mistake when we're trying to do culture is trying to be all things to everybody. So I really encourage you, before you take steps to decide how to improve your culture, let's also think about what culture you want. All right. That's my big thing, that just a bugbear I always like to start with, because otherwise we can go really far in the wrong direction. But getting into actually, when we do put it in the simplest possible terms of what is a positive culture, what helps people thrive, what helps people be engaged and here and giving their all to an organization. Let's crack in. There are 4 pillars. This is the system that I work on. I call it the save your culture. All right. Safe, aligned, valued, and empowered. These are the 4 pillars of creating a culture where people are safe enough and engaged enough to give their all, to be everything that you want them to be. Hi, Sammy. Good to see you. Yeah, that's all right. Okay. So to get a safe organization, we need to think about how we tolerate behavior, ours as a leader, other leaders, but also what we allow people to interact with each other, okay? Which means if people are experiencing gossip, if people are experiencing, we don't even have to go so far as bullying, because bullying is this big watchword that gets everybody thinking that these is all these major things. But I think most of us have worked in an organization where perhaps we have a particular senior vet who has a tendency to be a bit snappy, or we have, a particular head nurse who has a tendency to treat junior staff or new graduate vets just that little bit unfairly. So it doesn't really even have to be like the big showy, I'm being a bully. It can just be those little things that we just, oh, that's just how she is. Oh, that's just how he behaves. That's normal. Don't take it personally. If you are tolerating anything that comes out as don't take it personally, you are not allowing people to feel safe at work. So that's your first one. What is your tolerance for poor behavior? And the other one, big piece of the puzzle here, is how much effort and energy do you put into emotional intelligence? All right. That means internal training, external training, leadership training. That means everyday conversations about the importance of EQ and interpersonal awareness, and treating it as importantly as you would for a clinical skill, okay? Because we always want to chuck more CPD at clinical skills, but you've got a bunch of people out there, yes, me included, but there's also some wonderful other providers who can really give you tools to help everybody be a better clinician without touching their clinical skills, but actually working on the underlying principles of emotional intelligence and how people understand their own emotions, react to their own emotions, but also can see, sense, and react appropriately to other people's emotions, even uncomfortable ones. So that is how we really focus on making people safe. Next up, are people aligned? Okay. Are they aligned? We talk about what sort of culture is authentic to you. What are you actually aiming for? Is it the same thing that your staff are aiming for? This is why it matters so much to be able to properly articulate it, because that's how we get the right people. Okay. So how do we communicate? Who here has been accused of under communicating? Definitely me. Who here has been accused of over communicating? Definitely me. How do you do it? How often do you do it? What can they rely on? Is it a channel that they actually check? How are you holding people accountable for not just saying, oh, no, I didn't get that email? What are we actually doing to make sure we cover those bases? But also, what's your approach to communication? Not just, oh, well, I sent you an email. All right. Do we actually do the right channel for the right conversation? Not death by PowerPoint with really pointless meetings that they all hate, but also do we get them together to communicate with one another? And then that other big piece, this is it's the same as the culture stuff. When I go into an organization and they're like, help us, what are we going to do? Everybody's all toxic and we can't keep our staff. Do people even know whether they're, are we here for best practice care, or are we talking for contextual care? Are we here to, in 10 years, start growing and evolving and taking over other clinics? Or are we here to be a small family community-based business that brings goodness to the wholesome place where we live? All right, what is our mission? What is our value? Are our values aligned? Please do not overlook this. If you've still got words on a wall that say what your values are that were written over 5 years ago and that most of your new staff could just guess, like off the top of my head, I could put an assumption that most of you in your values have integrity, professionalism, excellence, teamwork, or collaboration. Like, if people can just guess your values because they're that generic, they're not creating an authentic thing for people to connect to be a part of, and to go, yes, that is me. I need to work there. All right. Next up in the save pillars, we've got the valued. All right. This stuff is stuff that we feel like should be the big stuff. And it's the flashy sort of things. It's the reward and recognition programs. It's the, we have a staff party, we give bonuses, those sorts of things. And we feel like it is more important because it's flashier and staff ask for it more. As it turns out, it's about equal. Yes, reward and recognition matters, but rarely in the way that you think. We'll touch on that in a second. All right. But connection does matter. If anybody's follows me on LinkedIn, I'm in the middle of doing a series of articles about the reasons that vets are leaving the profession. And loneliness was number one. Okay. People are not feeling the sense of community, the sense of engagement with the clients as well as the people that they work with. Remember, 30 years ago when we're talking why we all got into this profession, we're reading James Herriot. It wasn't just about community that I know the people I work with, and I've worked with the same people every day for 30 years, and they know my kids, and they've seen my kids grow up, and they know who my pets are, and they, have helped me look after ailing parents, those sorts of things. It's also, they saw a litter of puppies being born and then got to care for those puppies all the way through to birthing their own puppies potentially, and or end of life palliative care. That connection with community doesn't happen in our new society where a 3-year kind of average turnaround of staff is standard. And that's okay. We can't necessarily change the societal shift of shorter spans and jobs. But what we can do is we can create connections, we can create opportunities for them as they go that create that sense of, I am a part of something. I am a cog in this big family, and whether that is just my little clinic of 5 or 6 people, whether that is my big corporate and where do I fit in that, or whether that is my community as a whole and how am I giving and receiving from that community. This is really, really important. Yep, reward and recognition. It's great. Sounds flashy. We do bonuses. We have staff member of the month, whatever. We will touch on that soon. But it's the shiny distractions sometimes, okay? And last but not least, for the pillars of good culture, how empowered are your staff? All right. We all kind of know in the back of our head that micromanaging is bad. All right. But let's move beyond that and a bit into the nuance of, when I talk about my 5 reasons that we can't keep veterinary professionals in the veterinary profession, another one is boredom. All right. People don't feel like they have anywhere to go. Whether you're a nurse or whether you're a new grad vet, you have this really steep learning curve for a year or 2 years, maybe 3 years. And then you're like, okay, cool, I'll do some CPD. Maybe I'll do, memberships in that, or maybe I'll increase my ultrasonography, or maybe I'll start doing more emergency medicine. Yeah, okay, so there's a bit more of a curve. But then in my experience of the vets I coach is there's a 5 to 8 year slump. And they go, is this it? Like, do I have to do 15-minute consults about ears and diarrhea every day for the rest of my life? Like, no, thank you. And that is where boredom and engagement are so closely correlated. If people don't have something they're working towards, and that might be a leadership role, but that's not right for everybody, remember, okay? So one of the clinics that I've worked with for a few years now, we actually have almost every single veterinarian, apart from those in their first 3 years, kind of on a really clear graduate pathway towards their skills and competencies, every other veterinarian in that clinic has a job title other than veterinarian. Okay, so they are also veterinarians. Most of them are also doing their clinical roles, but they will also have a title such as new graduate mentor, or lameness technical expert, or reproduction expert. we're giving them each a niche in which they can use their skills and their interests to offer their mastery back. Okay. And we constantly allow that person to evolve and develop into that space. And then maybe 5 years later, they're like, okay, yeah, now I've done laneless to death. I'm done with that. Like, what's next for me now? Maybe I do want to go into leadership. So we actually help them to do with. And obviously with empowerment, we know collaborative decision making, but making it genuine. Does everybody know the difference between when you're collaborating, when you're asking for feedback, and when you're just sort of sending them the stuff? All right, because that's the biggest source of disengagement from collaboration, is that they feel like they've been collaborated with before, but actually that particular time all you wanted was, feedback. Hey, I'm pretty sure this is what I'm doing. Can you see any red flags? As opposed to, we are designing this and building this together. Okay. So make sure that you and them are really clear when you go out for collaboration or for feedback or for consultation or just for input, that you both know exactly what you're looking for. So those are the pillars. All right. If we get those 4 things right, and these kind of areas that we can pull and the levers that we can up and down within it, that's where we're going. Yeah. So that's the kind of academia. That's the foundations of good culture. But you came here for practical. What can I do tomorrow? What should I spend my time and money on? So that is what we're going to do. All right. Here first is the shiny distractions. The stuff that kind of sounds good, looks good. People write articles about it and staff will come to you asking for. But I'm afraid to say, statistically, according to the evidence, both across the globe and in multiple industries, but also specifically in our industry, they actually don't have as much bang for your buck as you would like them to have. So sure, do them if you've got spare time and money and somebody who wants to. But if you're limited and you're just trying to do the things that make the most difference now, these are the things that are often distracting. So the Google workplace. What do I mean by the Google workplace? The slides and the reception area and the foosball tables and the breakfast bar and all of those sorts of things. That, fun culture, waste of money. Okay. Google does actually genuinely have a reputation for being an innovative place to work, but that isn't because of the slides and reception. All right. That is because they have workplace policies around people being allowed to spend 20% of their time on a project of their own choosing and various different things like that. The reason that Google pours money into all of those sexy, good-looking stuff, the reason that all the big tech startups, sometimes even our own veterinary corporates, they're spending money on these kind of fancy, shiny things, is for branding. All right, it gets them the attention. It gets them media articles. It gets them occasionally, it'll get them an interview with a candidate that's like, oh yeah, I've heard this thing about that company. But if you can't back that up with their day-to-day experience of what it's like to work there, it's an absolute money hole. So all of the shiny, fancy, people want more beanbags in the staff room, it statistically makes no difference. If you want to do it because it's a good branding and you want to do a big media piece on it, cool. But only if you can back that up, that is authentically the culture you've aimed for, like the very first point, okay? If that is what you're going for, fun and modern and, we're progressive and we invest in all of the new innovative stuff, that could actually help you forward that goal of your branding. But if you're a normal vet clinic trying to achieve something else, it's a bit of a waste. But that one's kind of obvious. Like nobody here is going to put a slide in their waiting room, I assume. Maybe. Okay. So the shiny distraction stuff, I feel like most of us know we probably were never going to do that anyway. But here's one that lots of conversations come up about. All right. There are very few places you can go where people aren't talking about, I think vets and, veterinary professionals should be paid higher. Now, the science does not back that engagement and remuneration are correlated, which depresses us a little bit. I am, of course, separate to this conversation, an advocate for veterinary salaries are too low, all right? But when it comes to whether or not our engagement in our organization is actually correlated with how much we're paid, it actually doesn't pan out in the numbers. All right. So you can see that in the fact that some people here, and I know there's a few people here from animal welfare organizations, they often, despite paying quite a bit less, have very similar, if not higher levels of engagement than corporate vet clinics. All right. So I know I personally, when I go and I do culture reviews for organization, there is very little correlation between the amount people are paid and how engaged they are in the organization and how positive the culture is. And in fact, I would go so far to anecdotally put myself on a limb and say a lot of the time I see a negative correlation between those things. There is a big caveat on here though, okay? And that is Maslow's hierarchy of needs, all right? That if people are not actually being paid a living wage, if they don't know that they can reliably, safely sleep somewhere tonight and feed their children, they are not engaged in your organization and improving your culture, all right? So if you are not paying your nurses and support staff a living wage, then yes, your culture is going to suffer for this, okay? So when it comes to the higher end of the margins, there's no correlation between pay and engagement. When it comes to those staff who are much closer to the line at which their salaries are not assuring them safety, remember our pillars, safety has to be a top of them. And if they're not safe in their personal life, they're not safe at work. All right. So we have to take into account that this assumes a minimum level of a living wage. Okay. And that is why for veterinarians, we can generally assume we're above that line. For our nurses and certainly our support staff, we have to really ask ourselves that question. So if you've still got people and you think because Fair Work allows you to pay them that's okay, if you're in a position where that's absolutely all you can do, well, that's all you can do. But if you're in a position where you're looking for bang for your buck activities to improve culture and engagement, that bottom segment of your organization, lift them, okay? All right, next up, what actually doesn't make a difference? Okay, right before we get to what really does, perks. The gym memberships, the discounts at Specsavers, all of the kind of opt-ins to here, join our big corporate, and we have a, company that sponsors that company. The perky stuff doesn't make a difference. Now, the exception to this, again, I do know 2 of you here are calling in from countries that don't have Medicare or NHS support systems, all right, which means there is, again, coming back to the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, insurances in those countries becomes not a perk, but a basic life requirement. Right. So that is an exception. And the other exception that does have some statistical difference in terms of what you can do to perk out people's package, that even if you can pay them a bit less or whatever else, if you can up their leave, if they can have more annual leave, more sick leave, more parental leave, those sorts of things, they actually do make a difference. So leave is the exception to the random, we're just going to advertise all of these cool things you get by joining our big corporate. There is no evidence to any of that making an impact on retention or engagement. These last 2 ones I find a little bit ironic that I sit here and say, because I literally do some of these for a living. I help organizations with mission, vision, and values, and I do culture workshops, all right? But if an organization comes to me and says, oh, can you come and do some workshop for our team on culture? My first thing is only if I can work with your leaders. People want me to come and say, oh, can you come and do our team's not very resilient. Can you come and tell them how to suck it up? My first response is only if I can work with your leaders as well. All right. Words on a wall, the mission, vision, and values, that this is our aspirational culture, all of that crap that nobody reads. And like I said before, if people can just guess what your values are because they all know the typical buzzwords, they're not real values. They're not things that people get behind, that people are bought into, that people are joining and staying at your organization because they believe in. All right. And the same is true as workshops. If they are standalone, we're just going to run some workshops and then our culture will be improved, you're not going to get, a lot of people will feel good and boosted for sort of 48 hours afterwards. but then people's norm. It has to be a part of a genuine program of works and an ongoing commitment for the rest of the life of your organization towards culture. Okay. Just our culture's a bit toxic. Can you come and spend 3 months working with us? I do it, but I always am very clear. This is how much impact you're going to make. I've been hired by a corporate before on a 2-year contract to help them with their cultural pretty massive toxicity in an organization, and they fired me 4 months in because I wouldn't stop harping on about the culture and how much more they needed to do. Oh, but you're running workshops, right? Isn't that enough? So if we don't understand that these things are about living and breathing these values and bringing this to being a part of our day-to-day operations, it's just words on a wall and people know it. Okay. It's fine. It's good to have a mission, a vision, and values. But if they've been there and you don't talk about them, if you don't make them a part of your life, they're just words. All right. We all know how meaningful words are. So I'm going to just pause right there, okay? I can see a couple of hands up on Facebook. Anybody, teams? No hands up yet. But if you wanted questions about the don't do's before we move on to the do do's, yeah, first, hey, yeah, hi, Sam. Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. So Sam's asking about the perks and the annual leave and the difference in leave, and does it make a difference what type of leave? Yes, it does. I can't actually remember right off the top of my head the exact difference, because it is a little bit dependent on that person's stage of life. All right. So one of the things I've seen done badly, it's not actually included in that third section. We're going to talk about the nuancy ones, but I have seen people do things like increase leave for parental leave without balancing that with perks for people who don't want children, don't have children, aren't at that stage of life. And it can create a little bit of a us and them unfairness vibe. Oh, why do the parents always get to leave at 2 o'clock when we always have to do the 8 p.m. shifts? Those sorts of things. So it's really important when we're talking about perks and leave and flexibility, particularly. The word flexibility is a bit of a buzzword, but we really need to be really clear. That can't just be for a segment of people. That can't just be into stereotype, and I'm one of these, so I get to be stereotyping myself. It can't just be for mums, okay? Because if only mums get flexibility, there's a little bit of resentment, and there's this kind of adds to that assumption that they don't contribute as much. What we need to do instead is have a conversation with everybody when they start working with us or at their annual reviews or whatever opportunity you get to talk about, okay, we're an organization that values flexibility. What does flexibility look like to you? What do you need flexibility for in your life? And yep, there's going to be some mums who are going to say, I need to leave for school hours, or I can't get here until 8 o'clock after the drop off, whatever that looks like. But when you open the conversation away from parental flexibility and towards lifestyle flexibility, you're going to find that there's going to be young people who say, look, I want to take a 6-week sabbatical and go to Europe for my big trip and you to keep my job for me. All right. There's going to be other people who say, I do competitive soccer on a Thursday night and I want to leave early on Thursdays. And also I'm going on a big soccer camp and can I have a week of unpaid leave in August? You're going to have other people who are like, I'm neurodiverse and I find it really hard to focus for more than, 90 minutes at a time. I'd like to request an extra 15-minute break between the 90-minute schedules. What does flexibility look like to an individual? Allows you to be able to use a language that makes it not about the perks for one type of person and one type of person. All right. It's about, we as an organization value you as a person. And we know that we need to adapt away from industrial revolution day 9 to 5, turn up, do your job, go home, and actually acknowledge that people want different things out of life now. And what you want out of life is up to you, but we will help support it. Does that help? Yeah, cool. Perfect. Okay. So from the shiny distractions to the, actually, what should you put your money in? If you are going to have limited amount of time and resources and energy to invest in your culture, where are you going to spend it? And here is where I would spend it. Okay. Please, with leadership, don't just send them to a Lincoln course and go, yep, cool. Now I've got leadership tick box 101 done. All right. They've had a 12-month program. They're sorted as leaders. This has to be, like everything else, embedded fully in your day-to-day. What does that look like? What training are you giving them on an ongoing basis? Do they have an assigned and informal mentor that they can go to you that isn't their boss? Do they have regular check-ins about their leadership with their boss? And that's just not just an annual review that's like, yeah, you've hit your KPIs, you're fine. What does their leadership look like? Because that is different to what does their management look like, which generally is what their KPIs are about. It means, on that segue, what gets measured gets done. So if all of your KPIs are financial and outcome and animal welfare and animal patient outcome related, then how on earth is anybody supposed to know that they should prioritize people well-being? You need to have metrics in here about turnover, about sick days, about well-being, all of those sorts of things that actually shows that we count this stuff as just as important as financial thriving. All right, so it's again putting your money where your mouth is, not just words on a wall. And lastly, I want you to think about leadership resilience. This is the overlooked one. All right, we do a lot of work and a lot of organizations hire me to come in and help with their teams with resilience. And their poor leadership team, particularly the middle management, okay, because if you're senior management, A, you've often done a lot of this work already, but B, you've got so much autonomy about what you need and what you can get and how you can seek help that a lot of the time I've been middle management and I've been CEO, and I can tell you for sure being CEO is easy compared to being stuck in the middle trying to deliver what your boss needs whilst trying to give your team what they need, and they're often competing. All right, look after your leaders, support their resilience, support their emotional intelligence. All right, do not forget that group in the middle. It's so often done. Next up, EQ. I've said this already, all right, I won't harp on about it, except I will harp on about it because I can't stress it enough. Invest, 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 all right? Whether that is an external provider coming in to start with, but again, the same with the culture workshops. That can't just be, oh yeah, well, we've had some workshops now, we're all good on EQ. That has to become a part of who you are, what you hold people accountable for. All right, what are their performance conversations about? You know, at the beginning, we talked about safety and about the behavior tolerance we have for people who aren't being high on the EQ scale. What are we doing about it? How are we holding people accountable, and how are we showing that we're doing that? What is your team member skill like on the self-reflection and interpersonal accountability? If we spent half as much time here as we spent developing their clinical skills would go through the roof anyway, because this, not just for our team to have a better dynamic and a more successful culture, but also our clients, because EQ means understanding what our clients need from them, listening to their cues. We get less complaints, we get more engagement, we get people who are more loyal to us. Focus here. I've said this one before as well, we've already touched on it. Connection. Okay, loneliness is becoming an epidemic, and our team members are more susceptible to it than many others, than the average sort of societal norms, for a few reasons: personality type, tendency towards introversion, and the pressures that we have, the emotional vulnerability that we sometimes suffer, and that our jobs have gone away from being this community-led thing to this crack out the numbers 15 minutes at a time. We no longer get to go out to farms and vaccinate a pony and get invited in for a cup of tea and feel valued and feel part of something. All right, we are now just expected to deliver a service and move on. How do we create that? All right, that means us as a leader, you need to have genuine connections with your team. That means if you do not know your team members' kids' names, or their animals being sick, or what's going on with their family, or what their hobbies are, you are not putting enough effort into the space. All right. Now, don't get me wrong, I am not naturally very good at remembering stuff like that about people. Like, I'm someone who has to do all sorts of mental games in my head to even remember names of people I meet at a networking event. But For a long time, I literally had a file in my phone that just every time I had a conversation with somebody and I was like, oh, yes, that's their kid's name, I would write it in my phone. Or, oh, that person loves Taylor Swift. And literally, I once ended up writing down in my phone that that person loves Taylor Swift. And then when we next, sort of the next month or so, where they did something absolutely mind-blowingly over and above, and it just so happened that I had bought 2 tickets to a Taylor Swift concert that I couldn't go to anymore because it was in a different state. And in terms of reward and recognition, which we will talk about in a sec, genuine, personalized reward and recognition, that person cried when I gave them those tickets. So it's really important to know your people, okay? Because that connection, that feeling valued, part of something, that has to start with you. Okay, you need to get better. And I know we all, oh, I don't have time for that, or I'm not very good at that, and that's not my natural skill. It's not mine either, I'll be really honest. But you have to put the work in here. Build a community, okay? Last but not least, all right, not just the zero tolerance for the poor behaviors and the low emotional intelligence sort of stuff. How do we handle a mistake? If somebody makes an error, okay, what are we doing about it? Are we coming down hard? Are we slamming the door? Are we performance managing somebody that makes a mistake? I've once worked in an organization where an animal did die because it was given potassium chloride instead of sodium chloride by somebody who picked up the wrong bag out of the wrong drawer. And by the time we realized what had happened, we couldn't get the animal back. And we've got choices at that stage, don't we? You know, certainly the clients wanted the person to be fired. Certainly, you know, the Veterinary Practitioners Board got involved and wanted to know what disciplinary action we were taking. But we've got choices here, all right? I've got a choice to come down hard and heavy on this person who, the second the animal started crashing, thought very hard about what was going on and went and looked in the rubbish bin and found the bag that she had just hooked up to the animal and realized what she had done. And immediately, whilst the other people in the team were doing CPR, came and said what had happened. Now, in this particular situation, sadly, we couldn't get the animal back anyway. But in any other situation where knowing what had happened could have been the difference between life and death, the fact that she felt safe enough, whilst bawling her eyes out hysterically, to come and say, I did this, this is my mistake, that is a culture we want. That is a culture of somebody who doesn't hide mistakes and who doesn't feel like she can't talk about them. So my rule is, as long as we talk about it and as long as you're being willing to be part of the solution, i.e. we do debriefs, we do an M&M, you know, morbidity, mortality rounds about, you know, not just animal related things, but mistake related things, human related interpersonal conflicts. I'll do an M&M on those sorts of things too. And as long as you're willing to be a part of that and help us work out how to make sure that thing never happens again, then there's nothing I can do that's going to make you feel more guilt than you already feel. There's nothing I can do that's going to make you less likely to make that mistake again. All right. We put new policies, new protocols in place to keep animals or people safe. But you as an individual, you made a mistake and you trusted us to keep you safe when you told us about it. Because if we had just come down hard and heavy on her, what happens next time someone makes a mistake? We never know. We never find out. So this is about, how do we handle mistakes? How do we take a growth mindset to everything that goes wrong, even if it's big? Even if we have to defend, we have to be on her side against a Veterinary Practitioners Board, even if we have to accept the Google reviews that go with that. People need to know that they are safe with us, even if they did the wrong thing. And that can be hard, all right? Easy to say, oh yeah, you're safe here, we'll always have your back, as long as you do the right stuff. But we are all human, we do make mistakes, all right? That one's harder. Okay, so that's the definitely do. We've done the look, do it if you've got the spare time and resource. But I also want to just give you a very quick introduction to the nuancy ones. All right. Now, this is clearly not an exhaustive list of things you could do that have nuance to them. They're the things that I see the most often in organizations that, if done well, are fabulous, and if done poorly, can actually do more harm than good. All right, so here's a couple of examples. So bonus schemes is top of the list. where I see often these actually create more disengagement than they create engagement. And of course, that is not the intention, to spend a lot of money doing something that makes your culture worse. All right. So ones that work well, they are usually tied not just to that individual's success. You know, if you're a vet and you bring in over this amount of money, we'll give you this amount of bonus. Okay. That allows them to disassociate their success with the success of their teammates. It creates what we call perverse incentives, i.e., you look out for yourself and you'll do better. All right. What we want instead is that if everyone does well, you get your share of the pie. Okay, so if everyone does well and you've done exceptionally, you're going to get the top amount available that we have set aside for bonuses. Now, again, I know that there's a bunch of you here that are animal shelter or local government. Clearly, I know that bonuses aren't going to be happening for you, but the concept still applies to pay rises, to all of those sorts of things. All right, so the best ones, they have to be fair. They have to be applied across the board. It cannot just be for your veterinary team. All right. If you have veterinarians and you have vet nurses and you have receptionists, everyone needs to believe genuinely that we are all in this together and that shared success means we all succeed. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't say that bonuses are attributed by percentage of salary, for example. So you might have that veterinarians and senior leaders are getting more cash in pocket. If we make it something like 1% of salary, then obviously the value of that makes a difference, because sometimes we have the flip issue of, you know, a $500 bonus to somebody on minimum wage is like, wow, $500 bonus to somebody as a senior, you know, 150K vet. They're kind of like, well, I'm not going to stay around in this organization for another 2 weeks for $500. So a percentage and fairly distributed, as long as that person contributed to the success of the organization, then they get to share in it. All right. Now, of course, if you're on a performance plan and you haven't contributed to the success of the organization, great. The other thing that's really important, okay, is that it cannot just be based on technical skill. Cannot just be based on how much money you brought in, because what happens is somebody will prioritize money, 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 money. Maybe they're an orthopedic surgeon specialist. Somebody else will prioritize soft skill, okay, and they might be out doing the community day events for the RSPCA. They might be doing the training and mentoring of new grads, okay, and they're not doing the amount of time that gives them the available fee earning stuff, but they are contributing to the success of your organization even more. Okay, so it's really important that we don't just say, okay, well, it's based in purely on financial revenue or meeting KPI targets. Your KPI targets have to be distributed around contributing to this organization in non-financial ways, because doing the soft skill stuff, taking the extra 5 minutes per client, that might actually get you more clients, and you may find that brings in more money. Okay, so that's my big ones. If it is a flat fee, if everybody gets it every year, no matter what, or if only the vets get it and no one else, or only the senior vets get it and no one else, all right, we've got to be really careful. That is where bonuses are not only a wasted resource, they generally are bad for culture. Okay, the other one I just wanted to touch on is reward and recognition programs. Okay, this is where you see things like team member of the month, or, you know, our staff awards at the annual Christmas party. Now, I am not saying they're bad. Remember, this is about nuance. There are ones of these that are so good, but so many of these I see done, they take a lot of manager time and effort, a lot of frustration, and it's just like the words on the wall that we talked about before with values and stuff like that. All right. It's just, oh yeah, here we go again. Okay. So there's a few key areas to help you be in the successful R&R camp versus the, well, you're probably wasting your energy on it camp. All right. Firstly, it has to be genuine and specific to a person. If you just have a $50 gift card that you give out once a month, they're like, oh, it's a $50 gift card. Like, cool, I can go to Coles. Like, don't get me wrong, the cost of living crisis at the moment, $50 at Coles isn't unuseful, but it doesn't inspire the Taylor Swift tickets type of crying. All right. Now, Taylor Swift tickets, of course, that's a pretty major one, but it doesn't have to be that. It could be that I know you love this movie and the new Moana's coming out. You're into Disney. Here, I got you tickets. Or it could be something small, like, I know that your favorite donuts is from this shop and I was there on the weekend, and so I got you some. It's about using those reward and recognition opportunities to show I know you and I care about you. I am thanking you. All right. There's this thing called the hedonic drift. Hedonic drift basically means that we get used to whatever our current situation is. We very rapidly adapt to a new normal. So things like giving a Christmas bonus or, having a treat at Easter, people for the first year, they're like, oh, cool, awesome, Christmas bonus, whoop, whoop, whoop. By the second year, they're like, oh, yes, cool, we got that again. By the third year, it does not bring them joy. All right. It does nothing. They're just like, yeah, this is an expected part of my remuneration now. Of course, I'm getting my Christmas bonus. And God forbid, if you don't give a Christmas bonus, then that's not just not getting something. They feel like something's been taken off of them. So keep your reward and recognitions, keep those things unpredictable. All right, change it up. So, when I was first started in a particular organization and somebody came to me asking for the budget to buy everybody an Easter egg, and I was like, oh, is that something we do? She said, yeah, they always get an Easter egg every year. They'll be really pissed if you say no. And I was like, cool, well, I'm saying no then. And instead, we got chocolate fountains with some marshmallows and cut up fruit in the staff room for a couple of hours on Easter. And people were genuinely shocked and genuinely surprised, and that brought them joy. All right. So do you see my point about reward and recognition? There's nothing wrong with it. Clearly, I want you to do reward and recognition, but I need it to be not something that people can just kind of roll. Oh yeah, here we go again. All right. Has to be targeted, has to be specific, and ideally it should be unpredictable. Okay. Things like your staff of the month, that's fine. Get the staff to run it. All right. If you're fairly distributing it between teams and just, oh, that person hasn't run it yet, we better give it to them. It's not going to have the effect. Yeah. So I just chucked a whole crap ton of information at you in 52 minutes, all right? And I hope that some of it was practical and that you could just walk away and implement some of that tomorrow. Some of it's going to take some bigger work. Some of it's going to take, over time, undoing some of the stuff you've got going on. And that's why I want to invite you, if that you right now don't have a clear vision for your clinic's future and what culture you want, if you're constantly playing the Sisyphean, rolling the ball uphill, going round and round in circles, and you're not feeling like you have an impact or anyone's on your side in this, that is where I would just like to invite you to be a part of the mastermind that we have coming up. Okay, launching in late Feb, we start for the 6 months of 2025, where we basically work together with other leaders, just like you, veterinary leaders, trying to do the same thing, help you rediscover optimism, that you can make a difference in your team and that you can enjoy being a leader again. All right. We're going to get you that clear vision. What is the authentic culture? What are you aiming for? Before we start creating, what are you going to do about it? What are you trying to achieve? Because if you skip that step, it's all Sisyphean from there. Okay. We're going to get less frustrated. You're going to get to spend the time doing the reasons that you went into leadership, not picking up pieces, putting out fires and navigating conflict. And hopefully you're going to have a whole bunch of people to cheerlead you and be with you during the parts that went well and the parts that didn't go that well, because there will be things that don't go that well, and we will troubleshoot together and we will work out why, and we will debrief and we will go back and try again together. All right. But it's worth knowing that it's not it for everybody. We don't just sort of do, whoever applies gets in. We're quite clear that it's work. It's a 6-month program where we really want to turn stuff around. All right. So we actually do require you to commit to some homework, to being a part of it, to cheerleading others, to being part of a chat group where we do actually go, oh, what do you think? Should I say about this? Okay. But if you're keen, all right, we offer no bullshit. All right. I will call you on your bullshit and you can call me on mine. I will tell you the truth if I think you're the problem in a conversation. All right. But I've been there. I've done it. I've turned around toxic cultures. I literally get often employed and headhunted just for this thing because sadly now I've done it enough times that now it's become a niche. All right. And if you're looking for people in your corner, this is where you can offer it. All right. I'm not going to go through all of this It's a 6-month program. We do some one-on-one stuff. We do some stuff together. We do some coaching together. We do a chat group that we're all a part of. You do some self-assessments, but it's pretty genuine. It's pretty come at me. Let's have it out. Let's have these real-time, actual practical conversations about what's going to work. But remember, I promised for those who came live, those of you that have just joined in right at the end, well done you. We started off with 18 and now we've got like 28 jumping on for the special bonus for if you were here face to face is that if you want to jump on the February session, which at this stage is the only session, the only mastermind launched for 2025, 25% off. So that if you scan that there, it'll take you to it and just use the webinar 25% discount code, but only if you do it by Monday. So only if you're here today live, because of course, if you're not here live, you're not going to watch this by Monday. All right. So feel free to screenshot that. Honestly, it is great. It is fun. Everybody that does it, we're pretty down to earth. Okay. Be a part of it. Join us. All right. If you need any help with stuff, you know where I am. A bunch of you know me. Okay. You know that I am pretty easy to approach. They can probably attest to that for you. But I really, really want to make sure that people know there is help out there. You are not alone. Culture is hard. Culture in our profession is harder. Culture in the current day and age is getting messy. You're not alone, all right? People can help. Just reach out and ask. Any questions? Oh, a couple of people are dropping off. Obviously, all got next meetings to go to. Totally understand. That's fine. We'll send this recording around for anybody that didn't get the beginning or end. That's fine too. Yeah, okay. Cool. Hey, Nick. Yeah, okay, that's a good question. All right, so Nick's asking about, that kind of practical, but how do we do it if we're in it and we're alone? All right, so in that situation, are you at a corporate or are you just alone in that you're a sole business owner? At a corporate. Okay, yeah. Again, remember I said being a CEO way easier than being a middle manager. Okay, so if you're in that situation of you want to make a difference, but you're in a big corporate, and so things like mission and vision and values, you have no control over. You have to just kind of roll with what they've said. That is a really nuanced, tricky situation to be in. But all of the same stuff applies. Okay, so you might not have control about the words on the wall, but remember, the words on the wall aren't that important. All right. People don't buy into them unless you are making them a part of your day-to-day authentic running of your business. So yes, I'm not going to say that it's not really hard. Like I said before, I've been fired from a corporate because I wouldn't stop banging on about how they weren't doing enough in the culture space. So I get it. But I think the really practical things that we need to look at here is what can you do? All right. What staff have you got to work with? What recruitment and hiring and firing rights have you got within your own organization? What can you hold people accountable for? What safety can you create? What behaviors can you allow? How do you handle mistakes? So all of those things, if we go right back to the beginning, the pillars, the SAVE pillars about whether they're safe and aligned and valued and empowered, none of that actually needs your corporate to be on board. The only thing you need corporate to be on board is the money stuff. And that means some of the things like bonuses and reward and recognition programs. Yeah, it's really great to have their backing. But again, if you can do it on a small scale and you can prove that it works, a lot of these big corporates, I know you're in Australia, Nick, a lot of these newer big corporates in Australia, there's only one corporate here that is mature enough to have these things down and they're doing them well-ish, okay? I can tell you for a fact, the rest of them, absolutely flailing. Have no idea. Okay, so if you can trial something and prove that it worked and prove the difference it made for your organization, and we measure at the beginning, at the end, they're gonna buy into that because they aren't doing it better themselves, I promise. Any other questions? No? Okay, cool. Well, that's us, guys. Thank you so much for joining me this morning, and some of you in the middle of the night. I really appreciate seeing you here, Sarah. I'm very impressed. All right. You know where I am. Please don't hesitate to reach out, guys. Otherwise, the best of luck. I hope that you have amazing, engaged, fulfilling cultures, but decide what that looks like to you before deciding whether you're succeeding at it. Okay? Fabulous. See you later. Oh, thanks, and Gary.